have you ever listened to someone explain something so complicated, you are left more confused than when you started?
A very famous commentator said this to me. Right, the secret to great commentary is this: answering a question just as it begins to form in the viewer's mind.
Our guest today knows exactly how to balance both live, on air, and under pressure.
And whenever I coach anybody, it comes down to empathy. You have to be empathetic to what they want, what you can give them, and how best to deliver it. At the heart of it lies this empathetic communication.
Hi, welcome to Speak Up and Stand Out, the show where confidence meets communication and inspires success. And today's show is about clarity without losing color. Well, I'm Navin the Iceman, and I'm your host for this show. Ladies and gentlemen, I've already introduced our co-host, Cecilia Krishnasamy.
Hello.
Of course, the founder of Dare to Speak Academy. Hi, Cecilia, how are you?
I'm so excited because we're going to talk about clarity. And clarity is something I feel very, very important in communication. And of course, there's this magic word, color. I love colors.
Okay, well said, And I'm very excited today as well because I have a fanboy moment happening right now, okay?
Me too.
I've seen this person on TV watching all my favorite games. And of course, we don't want to just associate him with football. He's the voice of so many other sports. He's doing so much more. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the man that made Premier League exciting for all of us. Please welcome Mr. John Dykes.
Hello, guys. I will always be happy to be introduced as the man who made Premier League exciting for people. It's such a privilege and an honor. And I need to know why you're called the Iceman. You just introduced me as the guy who keeps calm under pressure. Doesn't that make me the Iceman?
Oh, yeah. You're putting me under pressure. Because, we don't do live TV. We pre-record this stuff. And you are someone who's so used to live TV. One take. Yeah?
Tens of thousands of hours of live TV. And
Wow.
We always used to say, if you can do it live, it cuts out a lot of editing,
Yes.
a lot of work for people. And you've got to think about those who've got to do all of that stuff. So it's a good habit to get into, a life skill. There's the first nugget from me today.
Wow.
All right. Okay. Now, let's start with a quick question. Okay, icebreaker. Okay. If you weren't in broadcasting, what's one profession you'd completely fail at because of your communication style?
I would say accounting, because I'm as bad with numbers as I'm good with words.
Oh, okay.
That makes two of us.
All right. So let's start at the heart of it. Okay. What does clarity mean to you, especially in a world filled with jargon and endless stats?
You're talking about the sports world, I presume.
Yeah.
There. Lots of jargon, lots of insider phraseology. And you're right, stats increasingly. I mean, data has become one of the big drivers editorially and in terms of analysis in recent times. And it really coincided with my career. But to answer your question, I think what's really important is that when you work in my field, you need to give somebody a sense of the color, but that comes as a secondary importance to the actual clarity of explaining who won, who scored, why that happened, how it happened, and only then do you start getting into the color and the stats and the data. So there's a very clear progression in terms of the message you send, the way you embroider it, and what it means.
All right. Okay. So, John, media training often turns people into talking point robots, right? How do you keep someone on message while preserving their color?
Yeah, okay, so we're talking about media training, which is something I do a lot of these days. And what I do in my media training is I transfer the skills that I would bring in a TV studio, on a stage. I've just come actually from working at a conference. So in all of these contexts, the same thing applies. And I think, Cecilia, you'll know this just as well as anybody. Initially, you have to ask yourself, why am I here? And that's not just an existential question.
Yes.
That literally is, what is the context for this occasion? Why are we having this conversation? What am I here to impart? What are you here to seek from me? And what's the best way for us to get that messaging done? So it's quite simple, really. It all comes down to, and whenever I coach anybody, it comes down to empathy.
Yes.
You have to be empathetic to what they want, what you can give them, and how best to deliver it. And that really spans any single engagement you could possibly name. At the heart of it lies this empathetic communication.
Wow, fantastic.
So this empathetic communication, is it something that you sort of discovered it? Is it something that you had a knack for, or did you have to work
That's a really good question. I'll give you a quick anecdote. When I first started out in commentary, I came, as everyone does, to it from a position. I was lucky. I'd been a journalist.
Yes.
So I had the ability to structure a message. I was able to talk about the W's, to work my way through a story. So I knew how to write. I'd been a print journalist. I knew how to write a story. Then you turn that into telling stories. But what I learned, a very famous commentator said this to me, and he came from a cricket background, funnily enough, and they tell good stories in cricket. And this guy said to me, right, the secret to great commentary is this. The secret to that is answering a question just as it begins to form in the viewer's mind. Now, if you think through what he's saying there, he's saying you're using your knowledge to identify a trend. And that trend is something that the viewer might have actually subconsciously become aware of, but they couldn't articulate it. So what you're doing is you're informing them, but you're also empowering them, because you're not lecturing them or beating them over the head. Yes. You're saying, hey, you know that thing that you've noticed happening, and they feel good about themselves. Oh yeah, I did see that coming. Yes, I was aware of that. And then you just explain why it's happening. Then you turn it into a significance. And what you've done then is you've created an immediate empathetic bond.
Yes.
You've empowered them, you've gently used your knowledge, but more importantly, you've created this organic, progressive conversation. So you're both heading in a direction. So that's why I really stress empathy as being at the heart of everything.
Yes. I mean, we use a layman's term or something simpler like rapport. I mean, that's something which is very important.
Yep.
Doesn't matter who you're talking to, yeah?
All right. Okay, John, I'm told you conduct corporate training and coaching people as well. From the broadcast couch to the boardroom, which presenting skills transfer perfectly?
One thing that I really enjoy about working in the corporate space is that once I get past the biggest barrier, which typically is somebody in an HR team saying, why should we, or a learning team or a development team saying, why should we work with this guy? He's the football guy. I'm reliably informed that all of you guys are going to fanboy.
He's so much more than a football guy. Come on.
Well, yeah. So once we get past that, and I get in there, it's actually quite fun to use sport, because sport is a fantastic metaphor for so many things in life. And even if the person I'm coaching has no interest in sport, if I tell a story that comes from a sporting background, it's relatable, it's vivid, it's colorful. And the beauty of it is the sport is life played out in color and on a stage. And it's played out in a way that has these larger-than-life characters. So it's very relatable. I'm lucky. I've rubbed shoulders and I can tell stories about working with David Beckham or Serena Williams or Sir Alex Ferguson or Jurgen Klopp or Mo Salah. And mostly people will know these people. Even if they don't, you explain it.
Exactly.
And so really it's a privilege for me to be able to come from this space. And what I'm finding is that there are many, many facets of what I've done for years in sports television that are incredibly transferable into anything. I've worked recently in conferences around sustainability. I've worked with fintech companies. I've worked in all sorts. There was a payment solution company I worked with recently. And they have incredibly complicated, tech-driven, data-driven, statistically heavy messages to put across about why companies should use their products. So what I did was I basically said, you find some sports analysts try and convince you by using expected goals, all this predictive data, all these metrics. But at the end of the day, if your message isn't relatable, it doesn't matter how many metrics you get out. So you've just got to deliver a simple message. And if it then means that they go, okay, I get what you're saying. Now, can you share that with me later? Sure, share the data later.
Okay.
Well, that rhymes, by the way. I'm going to use that.
That's nice. Okay, like I said, we go off script once in a while, right? Okay. And you were talking about like hosting football games and of course commentating on other sports as well. And you mentioned cricket. They're very good storytellers, and I've heard that, while listening to cricket commentary, right? But of all these sports, which is your favorite?
Which sport is my favorite?
I said not the sport, but which one you would like to...
Oh, to commentate on?
Commentate on.
Yeah, by and large, there are people out there who, through no fault of their own, don't actually understand the difference. So people will say to me, hey, you're the football commentator. Well, on the broad balance of my career, the answer is no. I've spent many more hours anchoring, hosting, presenting. So I'm a presenter. Effectively, I would call myself a presenter. Now, just to complicate matters, I do commentate on football. I do put the headphones on. I do get a microphone. I do go to a stadium, and I do commentate on a match, play by play, occasionally. But if you said to me broadly, what is your skill? I'm a presenter. And the difference is that the presenter's job is to basically string everything together, put it into context, to introduce the experts, to bring in the analysis, to execute the vision of the show's producer and director by being the person that actually leads the broadcast in that regard. So that's what a presenter does, okay? And in terms of, to answer your question belatedly, the same principles apply across different sports, but the duration of the sport very much impacts the way you do it. So what I mean by that is cricket could be played over 5 days. Right?
Yep.
So what you have to do is you have to find a story every single time. If you have a football match, you basically have the period before the match to set it up, because once that first ball is kicked, the whole story could change. Right? And so you have to start thinking on your feet. So I quite like football, because with football, you know what's coming, you know what has gone before, you have enough data, you have enough anecdotal experience, and you have experts usually around you to be able to formulate some kind of an editorial theme, which you can then present. And I love it when you put something out there and it turns out that, a bit like I said earlier on, answer that question when it's forming in the viewer's mind. If you put 3 or 4 themes or plot lines out before a match starts, and when it does start, things happen that you've kind of said were going to happen.
Whoa.
That's very satisfying.
And honestly speaking, he's talking about football. We had a question earlier on. Remember we talked about this, right? It's the perfect time to ask him this.
Okay. Because you, when you did your presenting, you always had somebody with you, right, who was an ex-footballer.
Yeah.
Right? So who is your favorite
ex-football pundit?
Who was a pundit?
Okay. Well, I mean, firstly, to clarify that, I've always believed, because I come from a journalistic background, and even though I played sport to an amateur level, I was never a professional sports person. Now, I don't necessarily think that you're not qualified to talk about sport if you haven't played it. But having done what I've done for so long, I can tell you this: no matter how good a journalist is, no matter how big of a fan you are, no matter how many hours of sport you've watched, if you've never been a professional, if you've never been somebody coming back from an injury, if you've never been in the dressing room at halftime in a match when you're losing but you're expected to win, if you've never been somebody who has existed as a professional, you have no way of fully understanding what goes into the sport. It's just a fact, right? You can get close to it by interviewing people, and you can get close to it by having an understanding of the sport, but you've never been there. So firstly, I would always defend the primacy of the expert.
I see. Okay.
Some of them get a lot of criticism because people feel, with the greater democratization of the media these days, we can all be a pundit, we can all be an expert, we can all be a broadcaster, we can all be this. And to an extent, it's good that there has been a democratization, but when it comes to pure sports presentation, I like to think I'm the guy who knows how to construct a story, deliver the vision that the producer has, and also elicit what we want from the expert. Why is this happening? What do we expect to happen? Should this be a factor in today's match? You're the expert, you tell me. Now, if a presenter doesn't have the skill to elicit what they want from a guest, it's on them.
Yes.
If a guest comes in underprepared, or if they don't know much about a topic, you should never expose that.
Of course.
What you do is you find a way around that. Like, where is this guest strong? In which areas are we going to get this guest to shine? And so, I'm a big believer that's important. Now, the reason I've taken such a long time in getting to answering your question is that I'm lucky I've worked with all sorts of people. When I broadcast, what I like to do is I like to do my role and then get out of there. I.e., set up the match, set up the topic, bring the stats that are pertinent, and then hand it over to the experts. So typically when I did the Premier League, I would always have 2 or maybe 3 guests with me. So I worked with a guy called Andy Townsend, who was a former Chelsea, Aston Villa player, played at World Cups with the Republic of Ireland, and a good commentator as well, good co-commentator. I liked working with Andy because what I could do is I could say to him, right, I've done my part as a presenter. Then I would, figuratively toss the ball to him and say, look, I don't want to keep saying, I ask you a question, you answer. I ask you a question, you answer. I ask you a question. I'll toss you the ball. You kick it around with the guys because you know where I've sent this conversation. And when I need to, I'll come back in and we'll steer it towards where it needs to go next, okay? But I like working with Andy because he got it. And he's very selfless. Some pundits come in saying, I have a specific set of knowledge and it's mine. And I'm going to keep it to myself, right?
Okay.
Andy would never do that. And if he had someone next to him who was a little bit raw or new or nervous, he would happily share his knowledge with that person, as I would as well.
Yeah.
So if I'm in a studio, we go to a commercial break, and I'm conscious that the guest is maybe a little short of information, I might just say, hey, you do remember, of course, that this team has a 60% success rate, what have you. And they'll go, oh, I didn't know that. I say, oh, feel free to use it. I don't want to say to people, hey, look how clever I am. I know all these stats. And then you throw to the guest, and the guest looks kind of weak in comparison, because that's not good for the broadcast.
Of course.
So you've got to be selfless. And Andy's really selfless. So I've worked with fantastic people who have great opinions, very eccentric at times, very colorful. But Andy, just for me, was part of a united broadcast, which is all I ever seek to make.
I totally agree, because watching the two of you together was amazing.
Thank you.
It's always exciting to watch the pre-match, even the halftime, even after the game. You know, some people miss the pre-match, right?
Yeah.
They just go straight to the game. But we were like, okay, pre-match is going to start. Let's watch it. You know, it's like, because it was exciting for us, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you're also known for bringing color into your analysis, right? Making fans feel the story, and of course, making them enjoy the moment that you are in as well, right?
Yeah.
So how do you keep the richness without muddying out the message?
That's an interesting one. Let's go back to why we use color. As sports fans, all of us want to get as close to the sport as we can, right? And as a broadcaster, you're in a very privileged position, because what you're able to do is both literally via the shots you're bringing from satellite or whatever it might be, you transport the fans to a city, to a stadium, to a pitch, to a dressing room, to an interview room. So you're taking them there. But what you can also do along the way is you can enhance the experience by saying, well, I spoke to so-and-so during the week and this, or I was at their training ground. And by the way, what a great training ground it is. So in doing so, you're just painting a picture that means that you're just elaborating, you're illustrating, and you're bringing it to life. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I agree with that totally, because I think there are millions of people around the world who actually get to watch the broadcast, but they never get to experience going to their favorite team's home ground.
I have.
Yeah, I know.
Who's your favourite
Don't
team,
rub
Susila?
it in, Susila.
Come on.
You know.
Do they wear red?
Oh, yes, they do.
Yeah.
You know.
Are they the ones you're happy to admit to supporting?
I'm still
Because these days there's a
supporting
lot
them.
of fans.
I'm still supporting.
Oh,
I'm always
come
a red. Once a red, always a red.
Once a red, always a red. Yeah, same here. Yeah.
But a different red?
No, same
No,
red.
I just found out recently
Same
that he's a
red.
red, just 2 days ago.
Oh, really?
Yes, yesterday I found out.
I've had the pleasure of hosting United.
Yeah.
When they came down, it was one of the worst seasons when Pogba was there.
Yeah.
Right? And then I
yes.
hosted Schmeichel. Who's
Yes.
one of my heroes.
Yeah.
And,
I've done a lot of work with Peter. He's an interesting customer to work
Yeah,
with.
he
You've got to be
is.
on your toes with Peter around.
He is,
Yeah,
yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Right? And I will share a story if you guys don't mind. Like Schmeichel, he came down for a grand opening of an outlet in Singapore, right? And he was doing jersey signings.
Yep.
And everyone knows he's played for City, and
Yes.
he's played for Aston Villa.
Yep.
Right. So there's one fan in particular who came down with a Man City jersey, and he refused to sign it.
Really?
He signed the Aston Villa shirts.
Because he was there, brought by Manchester United.
No, he wasn't. He was brought down by a Liverpool fan.
Oh, there you go then.
You know him though.
That's why he wouldn't sign it.
Yeah.
That's why he wouldn't sign it.
Yeah, but again, yeah, it was also the night where United was playing Man City. Yeah. So
he's-
yeah, but
He knows how the game is played.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah.
And a lot of the time, fans try and trip up players like that. And
Yeah,
they're
they do,
aware
they
of
do,
it.
they do,
Because
yeah.
the thing about it is they know that there's only one possible outcome,
Yep.
which is that somebody will gloatingly show this and say, he did this just to wind up the United fans.
Yep, exactly.
And that's one part of it. You see, the fans love this.
Yep.
They love this sort of adversarial
Yes,
part of
yes, I
the
know,
relationship.
yeah.
For the players, there's no win.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
No win in that situation.
Yeah. it's like one of I think the recent post, I think you posted on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Yeah.
I personally don't like it. I'm not a fan of a particular team, and I watch sport from a very objective point of view because I love sport. All my life, I've loved sport. I love every nuance of it. I love everything about it. If there's one thing I really dislike, and these days it is increasingly prevalent, is this tendency to say, if you're a fan, you should take as much pleasure from hating the opposition or your rivals as you do from supporting your team.
Yes.
And I don't. And people seem to think that you should be proud of them because they mocked their rivals or they watched a show in which their rivals. No. I think that's a basic human failing.
Yes,
if you take more pleasure from people's misfortune than you do from supporting your own team. And remember, we're all fans arbitrarily.
Yes, of course.
Let's face it, you only choose to support a team.
That's
you aren't appointed to that role. There's nothing God-given about it or anything like that.
No.
So therefore, it basically means I do this so I can vent all of my frustration in many ways, right? Anyway, let's not get into it too far, but I don't like that side of fandom.
Yeah, there'll always be banter. There'll always be banter, but you don't have to hate on someone, right? I mean, and I think I always tell people the same thing, right?
Yeah, in case people think, or they watch and they say, why are these people talking about football? I think it's a form of communication, and I think it's all right for us to talk about it.
Well, it mirrors life. It mirrors life in many ways.
Yes,
And it is. And football is one of the most visible, most watched sports. So therefore, as I said earlier on, it's a colourful metaphor for everything, really.
Yes, of course. As the founder of Dare to Speak Academy, I've seen how powerful it is when young people find their voice. That's why I've created these programs to transform their public speaking and confidence in just 8 weeks. For ages 8 to 10, our conversation champions. For ages 11 to 15, the Speak Up Squad. And for ages 16 to 20, the Step Up Launchpad. All our courses come with a money-back guarantee if your child does not achieve the intended outcomes. Click the link below to find out more about these programs.
All right. Okay, so let's move on. Okay. Right. Let's think back to the time you simplified an analysis for non-experts. Okay, and changed the outcome. Okay. It could have been a broadcast, in a boardroom, a training session. Okay, just tell us what happened if there's something that happened similar to that.
Yeah, I'm going to keep to sport on this one because I'm very lucky in that when I've worked in sport, I've very often worked with people who are not just in the broadcast or the journalistic side of sport, but there are those who are involved in the marketing, the business, the sales, the commercial side of sport. And when I was working, again, it's a cricket story. I was working in cricket and I worked with a guy who had been an England cricket captain. He was actually a South African, Tony Gregg, but he was qualified for England, he captained England, and he regularly got beaten by Australia, but ended up going to work in Australia. But he was there and he was working for the channel, which revolutionized cricket by launching sort of a different format, a one-day version of the game. But it doesn't matter too much. The detail is that he became their head of sales. It was really interesting. When I was working with him one time, he said to me, our boss is so hands-on that when we do a broadcast and we have all these ex-players speaking in their jargon, using all their insider terms, the boss would ring up the studio and say, don't use that expression. It's an inside expression. It's too unique and it's too niche. I want to bring a new audience to this sport. I want the housewives and their kids who are watching. I don't just want a bunch of middle-aged men watching this broadcast. And it was interesting. So he said to me that they took a very considered approach to the graphics they used, the visual look of the show, the language that was used on it, all with a view to being far more inclusive than it had been. And so I've always had that in mind. And when he gave me that example, it's an example that I've always repeated. So whenever I'm working anywhere, I try and avoid too much insider jargon, insider jokes, and I tell people that. So I've had people who come from, a certain role in business, and they have one thing that they want to talk about, and it's a very inside niche thing. And I sort of say to them, well, you may know about that, but is your audience interested in that? So I'm always saying, you've got to clarify.
Okay. And of course, what shifted once you clarified it, once you reframed it?
Well, in the eyes of the person that I was coaching, they suddenly for the first time realized it wasn't all about them. And, the interesting thing, I think a day after I first gave that example to somebody, I was talking to somebody who was in the job hunting realm and said to me, can you give me some advice? I'm about to go into a big meeting tomorrow. It's an opportunity. I'm applying for a job. So I said, right, okay, what are you planning to do? And this person said, right, I've done my research. I know this company. I'm going to tell them that I have done this. I've got 15 years experience doing that. I'm particularly skilled here. I worked in this market and I'm an expert at that. And I went, right. So you're going to just sit there and say all that.
Say all that.
Right? And he said, yeah. And I said, have you not considered asking that person what they need first?
Yeah.
And he went, oh.
Yeah.
And I said, because actually there's no point in you saying I can do this, that, and the other
that's true.
if actually they don't need it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
right.
to see the light bulb go on his head, and I said, by all means get that out, but only in answer to them. If they say, well, you know, we're strong, we need someone in this field, we're weak here, we could do with help there, then jump in. And it seems so simple, but I think we get a little bit caught up, don't we? In talking about what we deliver, our areas of expertise, rather than, again, developing the rapport, showing that empathy. What is it that you need?
Yes. So, you know, that's what I also teach. And, you know, I always like to use the word teach. I don't just teach, you know, I also coach. Yes. But essentially what you shared just now, John, I thought was very interesting because people go for, you know, interviews, right? It's like, you know, and they prepare for interviews. And just now what you mentioned about, you know, going there saying, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. But that was an excellent tip that you shared. Why not have that communication, have that chat with whoever your potential employers or whoever who's interviewing you? Just have that chat to find out what exactly they're looking for. Maybe in this context, they didn't say who they're looking for. So I thought that was very interesting. And I think that's something that, like a light bulb moment for me to use too, when I'm talking to my students or, you know, the professionals that come. And some of them, I don't really focus so much on what to do. It's more preparing them.
Yeah.
I find that is what I sort of focus on, because half the time, answering questions and all is not the issue, but answering it, or in fact, reading themselves, being mentally prepared, showing that, you know, the confidence in just answering questions, you know, and that we may look at it and say, what's so difficult about that? But some people need that.
I've been working with athletes recently, doing some media training. And what I find with the athletes, two things you said absolutely resonate with me. Firstly, being ready to answer questions. What I do is I say to them, anticipate any scenario in which you might be interviewed. It could be a pre-match, it could be an immediate post-match when the emotions are running high. It could be a media day, it could be a podcast, it could be any form. Anticipate any situation. Prepare without over-preparing answers, but more importantly, be ready. It's almost like muscle memory. So I'm working with a tennis player. You know, if you rehearse that forehand, you know, 500 times a day, it's no different to actually just preparing an answer. If someone asks me how it feels after I just lost that match, have something ready. And I always tell them, just have something ready that you can go to, which stops you saying something wrong or angry or making a mistake. And then the other thing I do is I always say to them, just like you did, give them what the interviewer wants. And I always sort of say, an interviewer doesn't want a very bland, sterile answer that goes nowhere. You are empowering them. If you have a little bit of insight and they sort of say, right, tell us how the match went. And you say, well, you'll have noticed that in the second set, I changed things around a little bit. Again, remember what I said at the very start about empowering the audience? And I did that because my opponent started doing that. And I say to them, you've just given away something very simple for you, but for the interviewer, they go, great. I got an exclusive piece of insight from the player. So give them something.
You know, the difference is in all these interviews done by the athletes nowadays, right? From in the early 90s to the 2000s to now, you see it's so much more structured now, right? Every interview is so much more structured. Previously, you used to see like players refusing to do interviews, just walk away, and because the emotions are high, right? They're angry or whatever emotions, they just...
But now they
It's
are-
actually incredibly unfair, really, because
yeah.
if you think about it, these people are trained their whole lives for sporting moments, and
Yes,
sometimes
yes.
something doesn't go their way, and then within seconds, when the emotions are still high, there's a microphone in their face.
Yep, exactly.
Imagine you're having the worst ever day at work,
And then
right?
you have to,
You're
explain
around with your
yourself.
boss, something goes wrong, and someone's saying, right now,
Tell me.
speak live, but don't put a foot wrong, don't get angry, don't upset everybody, don't swear. That's kind of tough, which is why you've got to train them.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
They've got to be ready. Now, I'm not saying in the old days media training was a bit of a dirty expression in that it basically meant they're going to say nothing. Well, I take one game at a time, and I'm always going to give it my best.
Yes.
That used to be what people
standard.
thought
Yeah,
media
yeah,
training was.
yeah.
Now, thankfully, we've evolved where we go, yes, do actually give something, but
Yes.
control the narrative.
Yep. You can see the difference is massive, right?
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
so
yes, I
much
do.
difference. And I think that's why sometimes if you think that you need the training, then go for the training.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it really helps. It really helps how you deal with the microphone in front of you, the camera.
Yes.
Okay. And we've had the exercises done on this show before.
Yes.
And you can watch previous episodes to learn a little bit more. Okay. It's time for the Founders Corner.
Okay.
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 And Cecilia, what do you want to say in today's Founders Corner?
Clarity with color means leading with a headline, grounding with a why, and sticking the landing with a vivid detail.
I like sticking the landing, sporting metaphor there. I like that, yeah.
So this is what John has, sort of unpacked for us using athletes, in a way. And we coach students as well as professionals to do the same thing at Dare to Speak Academy. So join us for a program.
Anyways, I don't want to talk too much about sports as well because you do so much more, right?
Yes.
Okay, you do presenting, you do hosts, you do conferences, right? And during the downtime, okay, of course I'm going to use sports as an example, right? All right? But during the downtime, what do you do, like doing the show? Like for example, when we had a chat about this, right?
Well, you mean like when the matches started?
Yeah, when the
or-
matches started, like for example,
Right.
like it's a live show. When the match starts, it goes to the match, right? And you guys are off screen, right? You guys kick off your shoes, grab a pint, okay, grab some tea. What do you guys do? Like,
Oh, tea, I think tea.
you have 45 minutes to yourself.
There's a very good chance tea will happen. I'll give you that. I'm going to be incredibly boring and let you down a bit here because actually there are certain things called highlights.
Yeah.
Highlights don't make themselves.
You got to,
The best highlight. Now, there are two ways of doing broadcast. Or there are more than two, but there are simplistically the good way and the bad way. Okay. The bad way would be for everybody to say, we've done our show, we're now going to go and sit and watch the match, or even not watch the match. We're just going to go and chat and have a cup of tea and put our feet up and eat something, and then come back at halftime and talk about a match that we haven't really paid much attention to.
Yeah.
That's the bad way of doing it. And I've seen that done.
All right.
The only way to do it, which is the good way, is that the minute the match starts, even if you're going to eat, it gets brought to you or drink, and you have your eye on the screen. You maintain a line of communication with your producer. And throughout, you're saying, all right, can we start cutting a little package? Yes, of course, there'll be a goal or there'll be a red card or there'll be a VAR that you're going to edit anyway. But you might also sit there, and this is where you lean on the experts, the ones I spoke about earlier on.
Yep.
Yep.
And you say, Roy Keane or Gary Neville or whoever you're with, if you see something that you'd like to talk about, shout out and we'll start editing together a little package for you. Okay. And it might be that the pundit would say, yeah, I want to keep a very close eye on the left side of Liverpool's midfield because I think there's a structural problem there. So what you do is you'll start getting somebody in the control room to edit together a few little clips, and then they'll play it back to you and say, you happy with this? Okay, we could tweak it a little bit. There's a good example that we could use. So there's this constant discussion that goes on between the studio and the control room, which means that when you do get to halftime, the highlights are exactly what we want to talk about.
Wow.
So you're working.
So it doesn't happen by coincidence.
So
Now,
you're working, yeah.
sometimes when you don't have the resources for that, you just have to take what you get. But it's not that difficult to do it. But what it means is you mustn't be lazy. You work all the way through.
Yeah, you got to.
You never just say, I've done my part, I'm going to switch off now. No, because the broadcast suffers as a result.
Yeah, it does.
So, I mean, I'll give you two examples of professionalism. When I went to work, I'd worked on ESPN Star Sports, and we were a highly professional outfit. I went to work on the Premier League channel. We had some of the best people working in the best sports TV market in the world. And I had a director who said, if we're going to do a pre-show, we will rehearse for exactly double the time of that pre-show.
Wow.
You have a 30-minute pre-show, we rehearse for an hour. 45-minute pre-show, you rehearse for an hour and a half.
Wow.
And that rehearsal, while not containing all the elements, would have all of the pre-recorded video elements, all of the graphics. We would rehearse going in and out of commercial breaks. Okay, we might put a live shot in there at the time, but give me an idea of what you're going to say into that commercial break so I know when to run bits and bits. You would rehearse so that any element that you could rehearse, you did rehearse.
Okay.
Then the rest of it would be nice and fresh and live. And these are just aspects of professionalism that I always try and bring whenever I work anywhere in TV.
And I think that's
and
good,
it's important.
right, John? Yeah, I
Yes.
think it's good because in a way it tells you that you can't just go out there and do something without
Preparing.
preparing,
Well, it applies
practicing.
when I
Yeah.
coach. It applies,
Yes.
Cecilia, across everything now. I say to
Yes.
people,
Yeah,
and one of the phrases I use is this: you rehearse
yes,
for the right to be spontaneous.
yes, that's right.
Yep.
Yes,
You don't want to come across as being robotic and
Yeah,
over-rehearsed.
that's true.
But if you do know the structure and the format, then what you've done is, to use a football analogy, and having you say, it's like saying you've earned the right to play.
Yep.
And very often a football coach will say, go out there, run hard, win the
Yes,
tackles,
yes.
build a foundation, and then you can start playing the fancy balls and the
Yeah,
tricky
that's
stuff and what
right,
have you.
yeah.
You have to earn the right to play. And I believe that's true in everything you do. So in a speaking context,
yeah,
know your stuff, know where you're going.
Yes.
And if you're so confident in it that you actually at the last minute think of a better phrase, use that better
Use
phrase.
it.
Wow, yeah,
use
that's
it.
amazing. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard the insight, okay? It's not easy what they do, right? It's a whole team behind it.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
everyone's got a job to do. There's rehearsals, preparations, so much more into it, okay? And of course, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the next round, which is rapid fire.
Oh, here
we
we
do this
go.
all the time.
No
rapid
rehearsal
fire.
for this.
No.
No,
Okay,
no,
so
no.
I ask a question, you have to answer it immediately.
Yikes.
Okay, right, and here we go. Okay, most overused phrase in sports commentary.
Unbelievable.
Oh,
Because
really?
actually, anything can happen in sports, so it is believable.
Yeah, yes, okay, okay. Toughest simplification you've pulled off in under 10 seconds.
Sounds like this one.
Yeah, actually, it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the offside rule.
Offside.
Explaining the offside rule
Oh
in
yeah.
under 10
A lot of people
seconds.
don't understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If clarity had a color, what would it be and why?
Red. Come on, what else am I going to say?
Were you being politically correct? Yeah. You are
First
not,
thing that
right?
came to, you
You're
said
not.
first thing that came to mind, right?
Yeah.
You've indoctrinated me in red.
Biggest misconception people have about clarity.
It has to be sterile or educational
Ah, yes.
rather than
Yes, yes.
productive, organic, fun, empowering.
Yeah.
Okay. Clarity in one word other than the word clarity.
Transparency?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Transparency. Yeah. I think that works. Yeah.
Maybe. I'm having second thoughts on that. I might go with, I keep talking about empathy.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
And it's not the same thing, but I'm just going to keep talking about that because
It's
Yeah,
okay.
no.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
It's your word, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, John, before we close, okay, give us your one-liner. Okay, the sentence you would want every communicator, whether a CEO, student, or broadcaster, to carry with them.
Okay, what they should carry with them is, what does this listener want from me?
That's what
that's
you've been
that's
talking
where I
about,
would start.
yes.
What does this listener want from me? Because then that makes them think about what they're going to deliver, how they're going to deliver it, and how it empowers the person they're speaking to.
Yeah.
That's clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
That's
is.
clarity.
Okay. And Susila, you know what time it is? It's time for
I
your
know.
day.
It's time for your day, right? Now it's your turn. Your day. Write a 12-word headline. Add one why and one color detail. Deliver it in 20 to 30 seconds. Headline, why, color. Of course, you have to practice so that it sticks. Make it clear, make it shine.
So, guys, that's your day. Try it at home. With that said, we are running out of time. So please help me thank my co-host, Susila Krishnasamy, are always there for you. Dare to Speak Academy. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, my absolute pleasure having this gentleman here, Mr. John Dykes.
Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you.
They call me Navin the Iceman. Ladies and gentlemen, speak up, stand out.